A very warm welcome to my community. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. As always, I'm pleased that you have joined us. This is the second last episode in the mini-series on the East Indian community here in Barbados, and it's appearing, of course, on my community. Now, the first half of this week's episode explores the growth of the Muslim community and its charitable work. You will learn of how the community prospered through the support of Barbadians and how they responded to that strong sense of responsibility and gratitude to contribute positively in return. Suleiman will discuss the importance of this principle and how it has shaped the community's charitable efforts. But not before Sabir Nukura highlights the symbiotic relationship between the itinerant trader and the Barbadian community.
The life or the trade or the business of the itinerant trader depended on the local Barbadian community, who were kind enough also to support them, right? It was like each other, they are helping each other, right? Because local Barbadian community could not get any credit, and here this East Indian trade person was giving them that credit. So they were partners in poverty in a sense. So they depended on each other for their livelihood, right? So in those days then, as long as the black Barbadians cannot get the benefit of the labor that they put in, and then the money was in short supply, then at that same time then the East India would also receive money like 25 cents and 50 cents and so on. But they continue then to live in a community as a commune, so 5 and 6 individuals, they would live together and they would share food costs, the rent costs, electricity and so on. And they would go with their bicycles and put their bicycle in the bus, as we talked about earlier.
By the 1980s, you saw a greater amount of Muslim East Indians in the Belleville area, and that led to then the establishment of the mosque in the Belleville area. So the mosque in the Belleville area started in a home, basically in a garage, I believe, and then gradually moved from there into buying a property and a home, which was a house at the time, but then transforming it into a mosque. So you have in the 6th Avenue of Belleville now you have the Makki Mosque, or Makki Masjid, which was established there from the 80s. So then that was one movement, so into the Belleville area, and as they moved into the Belleville area, they established the mosque. In the 90s, early 2000s, you see a move also from Inner Bridgetown, and to some extent from Belleville too, into this area, the Cave Hill area, Husbands Heights, Husbands Terrace, Wanstead, West Terrace, into this area. So as homes became available or plots of land became available, they moved, they bought, and they built. So you see a number of Muslim communities here as well in this general area. Again, desire for a mosque where they live led to having a place in an apartment for a number of years, praying, doing their prayers there, and requesting permission to build a mosque. Unfortunately, that permission was not forthcoming because the area is considered a residential area by and large, and anything that was considered was a little too far out to contemplate building because it wouldn't make sense. Eventually, 5 acres of land was found opposite Queen's College, and the government had indicated that if we do a housing mosque development, then the permission will be granted, and that's what happened. And we have 30-something house plots, plus the mosque, plus play park area in the Claremont area. So that mosque has been set up and running, and you have a number of homes around it already built. So that's another area where Muslims are concentrated. In terms of the Hindu Sindhi community, smaller in number, but again, they started out in the Bridgetown area to some extent, and moved into areas like Belleville as well, and then into Fort George area as that came about. You see a number of homes in the Fort George area. The South Indians spread, again, much smaller in number, but spread out as well. Again, some in Belleville, some in other areas of Barbados.
So it is after the independence of Barbados, education system started to come into play. And then the life of the black Barbadian began to improve. So once that happens, then don't forget, the life of the East Indian tradesman is also tied to the life of the black Barbadians in a sense when it comes financially. And so their situation also began to improve. And so rather than then going and riding bicycles and putting suitcase on their head and going house to house, then they started to move into having a car. And then slowly they began to accumulate more money so they could save more money. And there were many of them that were British citizens, for example, or had Indian passport. From the time Barbados became independent, many of the traders, I would say most of the traders, then give up their Indian citizenship, give up their British citizenship, and became citizens of Barbados. And so that is the kind of situation. So even up to today, you'll find that almost all of the East Indian are holding Barbados passport. So their situation improved as the situation of the Barbadian, local Barbadian improved. And today the younger generation of East Indian tradesmen, the children of the early traders, are now dealing with the children of those who used to purchase from their forefathers, but now they have gone into using technology. They are using technology and different ways of how they can pass or give credit to their customers. And by the way, most, if not all, of the itinerant traders are East Indian Muslims. Muslims. So very few indeed would have gone into the itinerant trading business anywhere. And of course, the Bengalis had gone from 1910 to about 1930. And after that, some of them died out. Some of them went back to their homes. And so from 1929, when the Gujarati East Indian Muslims came to Barbados and started the itinerant trading, you will find that that particular itinerant trading business is 100% controlled by the East Indian Muslims in Barbados. And so they are living in Belleville area. They're living, as I said, around, away from the city area. But those who have been living in Chapman Street and King Street, they continue to live in that area. One of the things also is that once you have children, and then you have grandchildren and so on, earlier they will live in one house. Maybe one or two families will live together, again, to help each other too, so that the children will be able to save money. But when the family get larger, and when the children started to save enough money, they probably will buy a plot of land, and then they will build a house. So they would then move out. But one of the member of the family most of the time would stay to take care of the elders within the family itself. And so this is the situation that started to happen as the family started to grow. And that is one of the reasons why you will find that more and more are now branching out. But the main, the elders will still remain in the same area where they used to live, in the city area and so on. And this is the situation of the East Indian in Barbados today. But basically, the population of the East Indians in Barbados is about no more than 3,000. So you can say like about 2,200 would be Muslims, majority. And it is this Muslim East Indians who are playing a vital role in Barbados. If you say that you only observe that it is these who will be involved in politics, involved in every aspect of Barbadian culture, Barbadian life, and so on. And you have the Sindhis too, but they also are involved at a different level. So they are members of the Kiwani Club and Chamber of Commerce and so on too. And the South Indians are also involved, but in their own way. But the most visible that you can see would be the East Indian Muslims in Barbados. What I had to do with COVID, as you know, they played a fantastic role. What I had to do with giving water coolers to the students at various schools and so on, where they're helping people with the hampers and so on. So we do it not only as a community, but as individuals too. Because remember, a lot of them go in the country, although most of them now, or some of them now have their own stores and other businesses too. But they have that personal touch with the Barbadian community. So among the 4 East Indian groups that we are talking about, the East Indian Muslims are the ones who are closer to the Black Barbadian community in Barbados, because they meet them on a weekly basis and on a regular basis. So they are very, very close in touch with them. So they know the needs and how they can fulfill the needs. So individually too, you would have the salesman knows exactly who in this particular village is less fortunate that he could go and give a helping hand. A Sindhi who has a store would not be able to do that. The South Indian who is a practicing doctor would not be able to do that. But the East Indian Muslims would be able to do that because he touched base with the local Black Barbadian on a daily basis. And so that is why we have a fantastic platform that was laid by our ancestors and by your ancestors too, right? Because they were helping each other, right? Helping in need. Both of them needed help from each other. And even today, they are still helping each other. But it is the East Indian Muslims who are the ones who are playing a pivotal role in every aspect of the Barbadian community. And they are the ones who are in the forefront in building the nations. The others are doing so too, but to a lesser extent.
Yeah, again, that started early as well in philanthropy. You had in the 60s the Barbados Muslim Welfare Association, who would have donated to the building of the QEH, Queen Elizabeth Hospital. You've had, at the time of independence, the community coming together and offering a gift to the government. Our first Prime Minister indicated that that should be a conference table. That was done, so they raised money, built that, and donated that. Plus other charitable events to persons in poverty, fires, and so on. So you saw that over the years from the 60s right up till now. You see a gradual increase in charitable activities among the community, and they see it as very important for us to get involved in charitable activities and helping those who are in need. It's definitely part of our faith. Our faith commands us to be charitable, to be kind, to be giving, especially to those in need, those in want, and to help build the community in which we live, to contribute to the community. It's also part of the East Indian culture as well, to be charitable, to be kind. And so the business that we do, by and large, from the very early days, put us in contact with many Barbadians. And our livelihood from that point of view would have been gained from interacting with Barbados. So we felt also it's important to give back to the society that we lived in and that we gain financial gain from, to give back what we can.
In recent times, the Muslim community in Barbados has seen significant growth and consolidation, reflecting a vibrant and dynamic presence here on the island. This expansion is not just in numbers, but also in their contribution to the wider society through businesses, education, and community service. From the establishment of new places of worship to active involvement in charitable initiatives, the community continues to strengthen its roots while embracing the diverse cultural fabric of Barbados. Suleiman speaks of its evolution, the milestones they have reached, and the impact they have made as they continue to thrive and expand in their adopted home.
I think there's a consolidation. There are a number of changes. More persons have come into Islam and joined the community. The East Indian community is growing in terms of family numbers, growing not so much by migration anymore, although there's a small amount of it, but not much by migration. Actually, there's a bit of a reverse migration. Now that India is doing better, you see some families are going back, not necessarily to stay, but spend more time there. They have properties. Some have sold their properties and done well. So you've seen that happening. So there's still very much a link between the community here and families that are left in India, or villages or homes that are left there. So that is happening. You've seen the establishment of a Muslim school within the community. Again, it's a Muslim school, so not necessarily only catering to East Indians, but a wider Muslim audience. And also persons who are not of the faith will attend the school as well, because they see it as a good school. So that came about in the 90s happening. You see a lot more involvement in the community in different ways. So it's not only economic ventures that they're being involved in, but they're involved in many social, civil society organizations. You see members of the East Indian community getting involved in these civil society organizations and making their mark in environmental issues, in politics, in a number of different areas that are happening. You see the younger generation getting involved. You have teachers now who are teaching at university as well as schools and colleges, yes.
Well, when I left the Barbados Community College, and what would have happened is attending the community college would have widened my horizons. I came from a sheltered background. I was exposed to ideas and philosophies and ways of thinking that really opened my eyes, and I used to be hungry for this knowledge, and I became very interested in like post-colonial literature and colonialism and how colonialism impacts on contemporary development. And I used to read everything I could get my hands on, and this is the 1980s, so left-wing ideas were popular. I got into reading Marxist theory, and alternative ideologies like communism and so on used to fascinate me, and I was good at languages and so on. So I became really, and I told myself, when I leave BCC, I want to pursue something like either politics or history or sociology or somewhere along that line, or combine it with languages. But life happened, and my mom was ill, and then so I stayed home for a bit. So I didn't go to university immediately, and then I went to university. How can I put it? Relatively late as compared to my other classmates, right? And by this time I should have been married, because girls of my generation, there has been a shift, many social changes, right? But I'm speaking about when I was growing up. So we got, girls of my generation, by the time we were about 17 to 18, we got married and, started families and so on. And that wasn't the case with me, because that's not what I wanted. And so I resisted, and I didn't get married or anything. So when I went to university, I was already 24. I started at 24. I went to university in 97. But that was a wonderful experience. I don't know if I was the only Muslim girl at the university. There may have been others in maybe other faculties, but I know that it seemed to me that I was the only one, because I was the only one wearing the headscarf, right, the hijab. But I wasn't treated badly. I wasn't treated, everyone, I interacted well with everyone. Everyone was kind to me. All my professors, they were very good to me. I enjoyed my studies. So I studied, I did a double major in sociology and political science. And then when I finished, I worked for about 5 years at the Barbados Community College, and then I did a master's at Ohio University in international development. And I returned to Barbados, continued working at the community college, and sometimes I teach part-time at the university as well. And then I started my doctorate in early 2011, late 2010, and I graduated in 2014, so that's 10 years now. Yeah, a doctorate in Doctor of Philosophy and Sociology, right? And my research, so when I did my master's, I started doing research on because over the years, I became very interested in, while I was a student in my undergrad years, I became interested in race and ethnicity and the ways in which, how we create boundaries, and where do we get notions of race and differences, the ideological construction of differences. Those types of things interested me a lot. So I decided to pursue that in some form or fashion. I became interested in ethnic minorities in Barbados. And I was saying, well, a lot of work has been done in Trinidad and Suriname and Guyana on ethnic minorities, because they are plural societies and so on. And I noticed that Barbados, the literature and so on, even the discourses on race in Barbados is just, you know, two groups of people, the blacks and the whites, and there was kind of like no real acknowledgement of the Indian presence, except to mention that Indians are gaining wealth and so on. And that was also something of interest to me. And therefore, I decided to just start looking at how Barbadian society is changing, how it's becoming more plural, and the role that ethnic minorities play within the greater political economy and so on. So that was, you know, I focused on some of that in my master's. And I tried to frame it within the dialogue of the colonial beginnings and colonial creation of the plantation society, but how that continues into the present day, and how ethnic minorities manage to fit themselves within this larger, newer plantation type society. Yeah. So yeah, and then with the PhD, I extended some of that, but I started focusing more on like identity creation, how Indians, but I will clarify when I say Indians in a bit, how they identify themselves and how they're assimilating into the Barbadian society, how they view themselves, the construct Bajan. What does that mean? What does that mean for an Indo-descended person and that type of thing? So I wrote about that. Now, I guess you know by now that all Indians aren't the same, right? So the community I come from is the Gujarati Muslim community. So that's where my focus was. I couldn't, you know, focus on all Indians, so I just focused in on the Gujarati Muslim community. And then I started defining them as an ethnic group, right? Because they come from the state of Gujarat. But Gujarat isn't necessarily a Muslim state, but all the Gujaratis in Barbados are Muslim, right? And that lended interest to my research as well. So in doing that, I ended up, you know, you have to do in-depth research. So I ended up doing a historical background, and I made sure to include the stories of women. So I ended up looking at stories of different generations of women, how different generations of Gujarati Muslim women have navigated Barbadian Creole space, you know, how have they made sense of themselves as minorities within the space of Barbados. And it's very interesting, really and truly, you know, how people see themselves. You know, older women, you know, you have first generation. The first generations, I define them as those who came from India, and I define the second generation as people who were born in Barbados of Indian parents. The second generation women would have had a hard time because they were the ones who were given the task, unwittingly of course, of reviving culture, maintaining culture. They became the people that were seen as the repositories of the culture of Gujarat and so on, or the particular community that we come from. And their upbringing, therefore, was strict. And then their children now are the third generations, and they have a different experience. Their experiences are different to, like, for example, my generation, and my sister's generations. These girls, you know, today, they are accessing education freely, right? They don't have those cultural boundaries and constructs like my generation would have. It's not to say everything has changed, but there has been many, many social changes. And education is one main phenomena, if you want to call it that, that people are navigating, Muslim girls are navigating in terms of their identities and so on. Yeah. So I found that that's one thing I wrote about, identities, hyphenated identities. So you have the older generations, you know, saying, you know, I would say I'm an Indian, you know. Younger generations, I'm Bajan. You know, they'd always be, I'm Bajan. Yeah, my background is Indian, but I don't know much about, they'd say I don't know much about Gujarat. Although today with globalization, there's a lot more movement back and forth from India because ease of travel. Like my parents' generation, people would go back to India like just once in their lifetime. But now people go frequently because that's how it is. Things have changed. So I found that younger generations have hyphenated identities. They say, well, Indo-Barbadian, Indo-Bajan. There is, for the younger generation, there is not a lot of negativity attached to calling themselves Bajan. Prior generations, Bajan had a whole set of attachments to it, right? Religion could complicate things because, of course, now for women, Muslim women, many but not all, will wear headscarves and dress differently. So that may then change the way people view them, which may affect their identities as well. But that is something that people are navigating and dealing with.
Dr. Dega highlights a positive truth. The members of the East Indian community here in Barbados, while deeply rooted in their own traditions and customs, proudly identify with Barbadian culture. Their journey is a testament to the beauty of cultural integration, where different types of heritage enrich the tapestry of our nation. This dual identity not only strengthens their connections to Barbados, but also underscores the importance of embracing and celebrating diversity. As they honor their roots and contribute to the broader society, the East Indian community exemplifies the spirit of unity and belonging that defines what it means to be truly Barbadian. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been My Community. As we always say here, do take good care of yourself and look out for the interests of your neighbors.